This is TWiT.
A new iPod is announced.
Newish.
Yes,
newish. They decided that they're going to honor the DNR order, do not resuscitate order, but they're not going to pull the plug.
My thought on this, they haven't updated the iPod Touch in 4 years. My thought is, this is the last iPod ever.
Probably, but I think it's more like this is where they start to transition. They start to change it from this is the all-in-one music device to this is the thing that you buy your kid after you buy them the game subscription and after you buy them the TV subscription. I think that their services push has made this at least worth upgrading the processors to make sure it will work with the newest operating system and the newest systems. And I think that if we see a revived iPod next year where they actually upgrade the screen, get rid of those bezels that I'm sure lots of people are complaining about.
They're not going to do that.
Well, no. I'm saying that if
that's called the Mini. That's called the iPad Mini.
iPad Nano.
But you can't. Well, you can't put a Mini in your pocket, and also it's like. I think the iPad Mini it's affordable, but it's not quite let your kids drool all over it and drop it in a toilet just to see what would happen thing. That's still the Kindle Fire. For $50, you're gonna buy like 5 of them and just give the kid a new one every time they magic marker all over it. For $400, not so much for an iPad Mini.
So $200 for the 32 gig version, $300 for the 128 gig, and there is a 256 gig model for $400, and they do highlight the fact that it will support arcade. But the key here is it is really an iPhone 7 grade processor, an A10 processor. Renee?
Yeah, no, that's absolutely. A long time ago when I was talking to Apple about the iPhone SE, their line was that there were some people who just loved that device and that form factor, and they wanted to allow those people to keep on loving it for at least a few more years. And that was the same line when they updated the iPod Touch in 2015. Same form factor. We just want to make sure that it lasts. If you really love it, it's not a huge market for them, but if you really love that device, they want to make sure you can keep using it. And this feels like the exact same thing. It's like the minimal viable update. It's a new processor, no Touch ID, no Face ID, no Apple Pay, no bigger screen, no Liquid Retina, no OLED, no anything that any modern iPhone or iPad has had in the last 3-4 years. But if you if you were going to buy an iPod Touch, no matter what, now at least you can have one that will last for iOS 13, 14, and probably 15.
You could probably get a used iPhone 7 for less. And just take the
Some people
SIM
just
out.
don't want the radio. Like, yeah, they just don't. They don't want their kids to have the radio. They don't. They just want like a very. And also, a bunch of people told me that in the accessibility community, they use it as a very low cost screen reader.
Yeah.
So they get this, and also schools who are doing coding projects, they get the kids a bunch of iPod Touches to run their sample apps and things on.
I'm looking.
So it's like very niche uses, but very.
I'm looking on Swappa, for instance, at an iPhone 7. $185 starting point. That's probably for this 32 gig. So it's comparably priced. This, in fact, it looks just like the new iPod Touch.
Way better cameras, though.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So and if you took the SIM card out, it would be functionally similar, wouldn't it? I mean,
it'll harass you.
I think Andy's onto something, though, that this is definitely Apple's entry-level device to get into its services. And if you're an Android user, let's say, and you kind of want to check out what this whole Apple Arcade thing is all about, you're interested in it, maybe kids or no kids, I think, you could see yourself spending $200 on an Apple device so that you can check out the services, but it's a little harder to convince yourself to buy a brand new, even iPhone 7 at about, I think, what are they, $450 for the cheapest one. Yeah. So this is the brand new, device from Apple that it's the absolute cheapest way that you can get into the system. So it's, if, they seem to be focusing really hard on services, and this is a great way to get people in that don't otherwise want to spend the money to get in.
Yeah. Another thing that occurred to me, it's been so long since I've even used an iPod Touch that is it can you use it as the iOS pairing for an Apple Watch? Because if you could use that as the thing that would give you the sort of services that you want from the watch without necessarily having an iPhone as your main thing. That's something I'd like to try because
interesting.
I came so close to buying a Series 3 watch over the weekend when they came down to something like $200 because Android Wear is just, boy, it's like the kid that is like waiting for their parents to pick them up from soccer practice and is starting to wonder if they even remember that they have a son. That's how Google is treating Android Wear at this point, where if you own one, you're kind of ready to realize that maybe they're never coming for me ever, and maybe I should just get an Apple Watch and a secondhand iPhone.
Bad news. You have to get an iPhone. There's no Apple Watch app for the iPod Touch.
I think they're missing a trick there.
I agree with you. That would be a very interesting combination.
I've always thought that even if you could just pair it with an iPad or a MacBook, I think that would open things up so much. But I'm sure there's something enough to just the iPhone people.
Okay. I still think you could make a note of this. We'll talk again in 5 years. I think this could be the end of a much heralded technology line, the last iPod.
Yeah.
I just don't see 4 years. I mean, it took 4 years to do this. Are they going to do 4 years from now? Are they going to do another iPod Touch? I just don't see it.
I mean, the only slightly awkward thing is it keeps a 4-inch screen on the market for another 3-4 years, which means developers have to support it for 3-4 years.
And how long is Apple going to want to make sure iOS works on it? I just feel like maybe they'll make a smaller iPad if they sold 1 million of these, maybe they'd make a small. I don't even think they're going to sell 1 million of them.
But it's such an interesting idea, though. Like, I know, unfortunately, Apple isn't the company that likes to have lots of different projects going. They really, as we've discussed before, like the reason why a certain feature isn't available for even the Mac or the iPhone is because there's one person who's responsible for it, and they've been pulled off to work on something else. But wouldn't it be great if they decided that the iPod name is right now they're not really using it, but that means that they can sort of take the same principle that Steve Jobs had when he introduced it, which is to say that yes, it's a music player, but we're not going to call it the iPlayer. We're calling it the iPod. It's just a container for digital stuff that's in your life, and a screen and an audio jack and a couple of buttons that let you access it. Wouldn't it be interesting if they were to take that concept and say, we are now free to not necessarily make it look like an iPhone. We're free to put extra buttons on it if we want. We're free to even make it a larger square screen if we wanted to. I would love to see the designers at Apple just really go for this and decide that there is room for something that is more focused and more specific than a phone, but still not requiring you to find room for an iPad mini or something.